Number 7, Alabama, 3-point favorite. Another 3-point favorite. Number 11, Tennessee. The over-under I have is 0.5 touchdown passes for Nico Iamaleava. Nico's last touchdown pass, I just referenced it. It was the Dante Thornton pass that I salivated over in the recap pod. It's still one of the best throws I've seen this year. I mean, I realize Nico has had a very frustrating time since then, but that throw, if you're looking for reasons to get back aboard the Nico hype train, just watch that on repeat. I promise it'll do it for you. And I know what you're thinking. I'm talking to you, Will. I'm not even talking to the listeners. I'm just talking to you. Tennessee's offense against Bama's defense is suddenly a something's got to give matchup for all the wrong reasons. It is. I did a breakdown for SDS of the last 10 quarters for both of those units, because really that's what it is. It's 10 quarters, like halftime of the Georgia game for Bama for that defense, and then halftime of the Oklahoma game for the Tennessee offense. Nico's numbers the last 10 quarters: 0 touchdown passes, 1 bad telegraphed interception against Florida, 6.1 yards per attempt, 21 rushes for 38 yards, sack yards factored into that as well, but still 2 completions of 30 yards and 7 sacks taken. Tennessee has 40 first downs on 32 drives, only 5 of which resulted in touchdowns in that 10-quarter stretch. Not great. That's not good.
It appears they did the opposite of what we always joke about. They used all the good plays at the beginning of the season, and now they're out of good plays.
It's a good point. Where do the good plays go? Are they gone? Look, and I think a lot of this does come down to execution. And, I don't think you can just be like, the Lance Hurd injury, he was out for Oklahoma. Yeah, maybe that's something we were saying in game, but the 2 games back since then hasn't been good. Yeah, and I don't think
I texted you after all these crazy Will Campbell grades have come out. I said, you know what? That is a gentleman who understands the trajectory of his career. He saw Will Campbell. He saw Emory Jones at LSU. He went, no, thank you. I'm headed to Tennessee.
Kind of hard to argue with that at this point.
Yep,
buddy, you weren't cracking that rotation, unfortunately, and that's reality with two future first round tackles at LSU, and he's gotten the playing time at Tennessee, but that's been a bit of an up and down issue for them in the first part of this season. And Josh Heupel has talked a lot about the depth of these receivers, and I agree with him. I really like the depth that they had coming into the year. So I don't know that you can just say, Squirrel White, Brew McCoy, are they at full strength right now? We're midway through the season, and you're an SEC team. You're going to be banged up, all right? Like, maybe not as banged up as Oklahoma's receivers are, but you're going to be banged up, okay? It's pretty clear that any way you want to slice it, Nico has not been the same player. Needs to be more decisive, probably needs to trust scheme more. I don't think it's all of a sudden the scheme has just fallen off the face of the earth, despite the fact that those numbers are going in the wrong way. We talked about it on the recap pod. 5 of the last 6 games that Tennessee has played against SEC competition, 25 points or less. Not ideal. Doesn't necessarily mean that the scheme has been totally figured out, but it does mean that this is kind of a moment where you need to figure this out. Otherwise, this is going to turn into what we saw last year with the Joe Milton offense for an entire season. So the question, can Bama's defense be the get-right game for Nico?
Someone's going to have to get right. That's the thing, because we have to say something after this game. We can't just be like they both had fun. So either, and we talked about it, I know you'll get into that like in a second, but it's, if you can watch film and quickly learn, and shout out to one of the listeners that tagged me kind of saying, okay, actually Florida does run kind of a similar defensive scheme to Arkansas. I was shocked by that game, and I guess it took me a minute to go look at it and go, oh, wait, actually, they did kind of also figure this out. So if Kane Womack can take notes there, I mean, it feels like the blueprint is so out there. It's like the layup is sitting there for them to say, hey, you figured it out, Kane. Good job. You can build here. And then same thing with Nico, on the other side of it, it's like, hey, you guys run a ton of man coverage. Now, granted, they started the other game or the South Carolina game running zone, but against an offense like that, you want to see a lot of man coverage. So I'm fascinated right with you.
That's something I was wondering about. What's the scenario in which nothing gives? Is it Tennessee actually moves the football pretty well, but Bama forces turnovers?
Yep, that's exactly what it would be. I think this Bama defense still can can force turnovers. That's actually something I've seen them be pretty good at.
Yeah, I mean, they did it last game. They had 4 turnovers in the game against South Carolina. If anything less than 4 turnovers, they probably lose that game. They very much needed it. They got pressure on Lenore Sellers. I'm not out on that defensive line. I still think that there are pieces to like there. But yeah, I mean, you kind of wonder how this matchup is going to set up for Bama when everybody kind of knows it at this point. It's not a secret. I felt like it was a secret when I was talking about Diego Pavia, but it's not really anymore because mobile quarterback. That's what Nico is, in theory, at least. Byron Brown, Pavia, Lenore Sellers. These guys are not.
It's so funny every time you say Byron Brown. Like for a split second, my brain goes, "Who's about?" Oh, the USF quarterback.
USF. Yeah. Nice player. It's been a rough go offensively for our guy Alex Golesh. Maybe better times are ahead, but that wasn't necessarily a game in which they lit it up offensively. But you're talking about guys who frustrated the Bama defense enough to be able to play in close games late. And that's really what Tennessee wants to be able to do. And that obviously is something that has been a little bit harder to come by, at least it was in the Nick Saban era at Alabama, including the second half that Carson Beck had against Bama. Here are the last 10 quarters for that unit. 9.9 yards per pass attempt allowed, 11 pass plays of 30 yards allowed, 51% opponent third down conversion percentage, which is bad enough, but then you actually realize
what?
51% opponents are converting third downs on in that 10-quarter stretch. Georgia wasn't even good on third down in the second half of that game. So that number doesn't even factor that in. Like Georgia was 5 for 5 on fourth down in that game.
Right.
So
yeah, that was kind of the take. Like that's actually kind of why I'm shocked because that was the takeaway is that Georgia was not good on third down, but great on fourth down.
Stop rate, not great. I don't know if Max Olson has that number for the specific 10 quarters. I did not dig that up, but you get what I'm saying. Like it's straight up basura. Okay. And 2 interceptions, by the way, both of which were to seal victories. Think about that too.
Yeah.
Needed them. Very much needed them in that moment. And who knows if they don't get picks in those moments to be able to close out those games, because nothing about that 10-quarter stretch screams 2-1. Screams 1-2 or 0-3. So we ask the question again, what's the weakness that's got to give? Can Bama confuse Nico and continue his rough stretch, or will Tennessee's offense find some answers outside of Dylan Sampson and be able to move the ball down the field against this Bama defense? I think Tennessee has more of a blueprint for victory than Alabama does. Yeah, I know. And I say that as someone who predicted Jalen Milroe to win the Heisman Trophy. Thought a game like this would be a really good opportunity for him. If you probably look back at the crystal ball, I probably said something to the effect of he's going to really be able to test this Tennessee secondary, which I had a lot of questions about coming into the season. This is going to be a nice way to show that maturation in the Kalen DeBoer offense. And by now, I would expect Nick Sheridan as a play caller has a really good rapport with him, know what he does well and what he doesn't do well. The problem is that I absolutely hated what we saw against that South Carolina defensive line. I hated the performance from the Alabama offensive line. And if you've seen James Pierce Jr. lately, they're going to think he's Kyle Kennard 2.0. I mean, different physically in terms of the makeup and all that stuff. But I think that matchup with the Tennessee defensive front, even without Peely at linebacker, who unfortunately is out for the year, a big part of that unit, we'll see how it looks without him. But I think that Tennessee defense makes enough plays. I won't rule out the idea of Jalen Milroe playing extremely well on the road, which if you look at the home road splits, I think he's been a better player on the road than he has at Bryant-Denny, as weird as that sounds. But I think the Vols win a weird, wild, back and forth game. Tennessee wins 28-27.
Man, it's like I was about.
You've gone back and forth on this, haven't you?
I really have. I was about to pick Alabama, but then you just keyed me in to the fact that they also have to block Tennessee.
Yep. People forget that. Yeah.
Because I'm thinking about the other end of it where I'm going, okay, now again, I know this is not Nico. This is our boy, Joe Milton. But I'm imagining whenever they were playing at Florida, there was that glorious Desmond Watson hit. And I joked about you could hear the Enya music playing. This high arcing trebuchet through, may it be. It was like that was exactly how the South Carolina game ended for Alabama against the Lenore Sellers. And I'm thinking to myself now, we've said obviously this is a different quarterback, but it's not really functionally at this point. So I think this is a big time prove it game for Nico. And I think that the ability to force turnovers by the veteran players on this defense. I'm not going to call it a veteran defense because that assumes everyone knows what they're doing out there, but they have veteran players who have been playing defense for a long time. And I think the Tennessee offensive line is also struggling. So I think we're going to see, hey, listen, if you like defensive line play, tune into this one. You're going to see some offensive tackles, hands on the hips, sweating profusely, looking at the sidelines, saying, no, don't sub me out. I was just confused. I'll be fine next play. But yeah, that being said, I mean, I think I just got to trust Jalen Milroe. I think I got to trust Jalen Milroe at the end of the day. I think that these close games always favor him. To your point, that's why, to a degree, they won the South Carolina game. Is that, I mean, now granted, their defense really locked in at the end. But I feel like these Bama players they've found themselves in kind of the treehouse of horrors where they just keep playing the close games. And I think that they're better in those moments, and Tennessee tends to be worse. And so, yeah, I fully understand picking Tennessee, but because I could tell you exactly how it could happen as well. But the way I'd say it is, Florida's defense can figure out this offense, man. Like I said, I just feel like Ken Womack has to be able to. So it would be funny if he didn't. But I feel the situation where Tennessee's offense is dead in the water is so much more on the table for me because Jalen Milroe will just take off at a point. Like I think he could do something out there.
You know how many passing plays of 30 yards Tennessee has allowed this entire season, Will?
How many?
I looked it up just now because I thought I remembered it as 3. It's 2. That's it. I think it's, what is it? Nationally, it's tied for number 1 in the country. Tied for number 1 in college football. Jalen Milroe is right. And I am a believer that he is maturing. He is getting better at the intermediate. He is getting better at being able to throw 15, 20 yards where he's not putting everything into a throw. But when he is at his absolute best, the deep ball is at his disposal. He's hitting Ryan Williams deep. I don't know if he's getting enough time to throw to Ryan Williams in this game. That's the issue. That's why Tennessee has been able to time and time again be like, hey, we got a lot of new pieces in the secondary. And I'm not saying the secondary is bad by any stretch of the imagination. I would never say anything like that Jermon McCoy could potentially hear and then decleat me as I'm walking into the grocery store or something like that. I mean, that guy frightens me. But what they have done is so impressive because teams are fearful to drop back and try and stretch the field. They really are. And if you don't have your first, second read, you're kind of cooked. You can have all the confidence in the world. You can have DJ Lagway level confidence. And still, he was overwhelmed the vast majority of that game with the exception of that throw on 3rd and 18. So that's the issue that I have with Bama. And, I'm not ruling out the idea of Bama winning at Tennessee. I mean, it'd be a fool to rule out a Bama, victory against Vols. But still, it is not the best. It's just not the best matchup for them right now. And I didn't think I'd be talking about Bama having 2 losses this early in the season. But, man, as we're going to talk obviously about Georgia and Texas later, but there's a chance come Sunday, we're talking about Georgia and Bama both having 2 SEC losses already.
Yeah, I mean, we were texting about this, the amount of 5-1. There are 5 teams in the SEC right now that are 5-1, and it kind of reads like that Star Wars meme with Anakin and Padme. That it's like, okay, number 7 Alabama versus number 11 Tennessee. We're gonna see great offense from Tennessee, great defense for Alabama, right? It's like, no, one of these teams doesn't deserve the ranking. We're just not sure which one.
I know.
It's so crazy that this is a top. I mean, I could almost say top 10 because it's 11-7, but it's almost a top 10 matchup. And yet we're going to know by the end of this game that one of these teams is probably not close to that, probably because the odds of this being a high level game with all 4 phases and not counting special teams, right? Like the two units that are on the field 90% of the game, those 4 total units playing well, like the offense defense of both teams, is just so, to me, that would be the most shocking result. Like, you could tell me that, one side of each team plays well. You could really tell me that nothing goes well for either team just because it's going to be a little bit of a slog because of the line play. So, yeah, I will say, it's almost like with Milroe, we got to get back to him running, man. It's not because of the scheme. The scheme is good. We talked about this last time, but it's that, yeah, you're right. He doesn't have time to get through 3 and 4 reads. If he doesn't see Ryan Williams doing a TikTok dance over there, he's so open. He probably just needs to take off because Ryan Williams, and a great note there, man. Ryan Williams has got to be averaging 2 or 3 of those plays a game. when you talk about like so that's another actually like unstoppable force and movable object is the Tennessee, the back end of their defense, which is created by the front seven, and Ryan Williams, who it just feels like that dude is living life at like, everyone else is at 0.75 speed. It's like the ball gets near him and he's like, okay, let me adjust my shoe. Let me grab this. Let me put you in the dirt. Let me take off. So that's the question for you. What was the exact number you gave me as far as like a deep play?
Ryan Williams has 8 catches of 30 yards this season in six games. Nationally, he's tied for second in the country. You're never going to guess who's number 1, but it's Trey Harris. Of course it is.
Wow.
With 11. Yeah.
Yeah. So like that's the thing. So let's set the over under there. Do you think he gets to 2 of those plays by himself?
I mean, I can't pick Tennessee and then say yes because
he had that against Vandy. Yes, you can.
He's going to get 1. Yeah, true. That's a good point. He could.
That has nothing to do with Cade Wabach. If Alabama scored 40 points, they could still lose a game.
Yeah, that's fair. I'll say he gets 1, not 2, but not 2. Yeah. Difficult matchup. Alabama maybe benefiting from the fact that Wisconsin doesn't look as much like a doormat, and Vandy. Nobody's a bigger Vandy fan right now than Bama because I tweeted this earlier about how like I think that we're going to see a team get into the playoff that's got a worse loss than Bama losing to Vandy. Which, if I had said that a couple weeks ago, that would have looked crazy. But Notre Dame is the team that everybody's.
I was about to say Notre Dame will finesse their way in there.
Heather Dinich like quote tweeted that, was like just the Shamrock logo. I was like, yep, that makes a lot of sense. Yep, you're exactly right.
We've gotten to where people are just excusing that like it wasn't even funnier than the Vandy loss, where they're just like, well, what are you going to do? Marcus Freeman, he just loses the worst freaking game you've ever seen in your life every year.
Notre Dame was a bigger favorite. That was a bigger spread. Notre Dame was a 28.5 point favorite, and Bama a lowly 23-point favorite, whatever it ended up being.
Say what you will about Vandy, but they are an SEC team, which is a great school. There's lots of reasons to go to Vanderbilt if you want to.
Yeah, especially if you're coming over from New Mexico State and you're like, let's go to school in this part of the country. This seems fun. Mm-hmm.